In 1970, my late husband and I were hired as part of what were called then the charter faculty members. We were two of the roughly 45. So we joined the faculty the very first year the doors were opened and taught classes in the fall of 1970. I taught speech, I taught history, I taught literature. My main focus was what was called American Studies, because that was the field, along with communication, of my double doctorate at IU. So I emphasized American history and American literature, and then communication, and my focus was public speaking. When I first came here to begin teaching, my father and mother drove over from the neighboring state of Indiana, and we couldn't even tour the classroom buildings. The campus wasn't open yet for business. In the fall of 1970, we had 800 students coming and 45 faculty, but we all had to begin teaching down in churches and other buildings downtown. You had to take a hard hat tour if you wanted to see the campus. And my father looked at my husband and me as if to say, "What have you done?" What was scary was the risk that was involved, because we were set up to be a very different kind of university, and we were plunked down in the midst of a very traditional and in some ways conventional community. And I think it's sometimes negotiating the difference between the community's expectations, which was that we would be an instant U of I, and what we'd been charged to be, which was totally different. It was a little bit tricky. I think we slowly began to show that we were worth the investment of the state's resources. And I think we became a place that built greater and greater loyalty, not just among our alums, but also among the community members in general, who might have gotten their degrees elsewhere. I'll never forget moving from my temporary office in a temporary building up to Brookins, and for me to be in the library was just my dream, to be in the library building. So that certainly stands out as a memory. And then the opening of this building and the auditorium gave the community such a sense of ownership of this place that they hadn't had before. And so I remember very fondly those two moments when we felt as if we were finally going to be a permanent campus. The classes were small and personal. I never taught a class bigger than 50. I don't think at that time we had classrooms that would hold more than 50 students. Every class involved face-to-face interaction. And so we really got to know our students. And to this day, although it was 40 years ago, I meet students of mine on the street, and it's flattering to me that they can still recognize who I am. But I can remember them because they were not numbers to me. I taught them, and they were people to me. And we had such a rich experience that I think it was a wonderful place to teach.
The first time I met Judy Everson, I thought she reminded me of the Australian or New Zealand writer, Catherine Mansfield, who was a good friend of D.H. Lawrence's. And I thought she was a dead ringer for Catherine Mansfield. And so I immediately liked her.
This was a place that gave us a chance to fulfill our dreams, to try out our pet projects, and to be a part of changing the lives of students who had such a pent-up demand because there hadn't been upper division and graduate education for people who were place-bound.
Judy always was so energetic. She had so much vitality in the classroom. She'd come in on a high and she'd leave us on a high. She'd come in and she'd talk and she'd lecture and she'd get us engaged in dialogue. And she always had a stack of note cards. I remember this about Judy. Her handwriting was just meticulous, still is meticulous. And she'd come in with a stack of note cards and she'd go through these notes. And every class I ever took with her, she always had note cards. But I don't think she ever needed them. She just had them there because she was always prepared.
The students whose lives we touched and changed, they knew what we were trying to do, and they were change agents in the community in the sense that we sent them out, and the school system looked different, and the health community looked different. The helping professions looked different because we were here. Journalism looked different. The degrees we granted, state government looked different. They made such a difference, not only in the lives of those individual students, but all the people in the community that they touched and reached and served. To watch us become Sangamon State, I gave a lot of my life's blood to that dream. In 1995, when we began the transition to become U of I, some of the people who'd been here in the charter faculty in the early years felt that it meant that Sangamon State and its vision had failed and that we were being taken over. I didn't feel that way. I thought that it was true that some of our experiments hadn't worked, but we tried so many. The important thing was how many of them succeeded. And when we became part of U of I was impressed with how sensitive the central administration was to not trying to make us over, but to trying to salvage the best that was our legacy and give us the resources and support to continue to cultivate that into the 21st century. Is it palpable that I still love this place and that after having come here 40 years ago, it will always be, as long as I draw breath, a place in which I take pride and whose fortunes will always have a proprietary interest for me. And I'd love to believe that that's true of everyone who's come here for a class or a degree or a program, or who counts on WUIS for their news or Sangamon Auditorium for part of their cultural enrichment. I think we've made such a difference in the life of Springfield, and I think that for the most part, that's been a very positive difference.